So I was thinking of during these my sessions on this retreat, I had the thought of doing some going really going through some of those uh, nuggets of gold we have in our practices. Just doing those practices with you, some techniques from Rainbow Body Yoga, and then perhaps applying it to Guru Yoga Charge with both Buddhist and Hindu masters, meaning that we shift from one energy system to the other. Okay, maybe I need to say something about that because I understand that not everybody might have heard my talks about two different energy systems and about the reason why in our Sangha we practice both Buddhist Tantra as well as Hindu Tantra. So what does it mean? What is Buddhist Tantra? What is Hindu Tantra? Yesterday I spoke quite a bit about basic principles, and I've also spoken extensively. Well, maybe not. I shouldn't say extensively, but in detail about the difference between Buddhism and Hinduism. And when I say Buddhism and Hinduism, I specifically mean uh, the energetic design of those traditions, meaning what kind of energies they work with, what type of energy they emphasize, and how those energetic designs can be used in yogic meditative experience for our spiritual benefit. So, where should I start? So we have it is not really complex when you understand it, but when you don't understand, and there are many practice systems, methods, traditions that speak about practice, yogic meditation, awakening, and enlightenment in very simplistic terms. And there is no other problem in simplistic terms except that, like I explained yesterday, if we really have a path that has the potential to take us from unawakened state to fully enlightened state, then we necessarily need to know quite a bit of technical details because the way how our psyche, how our mind, how our energetic body is built and structured. So, we simply cannot. The actual experience of the basic state is very simple. But like I said yesterday, that people quite often stumble with too simplistic ideas and views because they are charming. They are very appealing. And there is nothing wrong, again, with simplistic ideas if we know that, if we know where we are in relation to perfectly pure, enlightened, awake state, then it is perfectly fine. But already what I said, to know where we are on our path, whether we are on zero bhumi, which it was my case after 24,000 hours of practice, 8.5 years of daily retreat, I was still unawakened. So the practice had some other effect than emptiness awakening, non-dual awakening experiences. So I've met so many people I remember the first person, a Frenchman, who asked me to give guidance to awakening to him in 2014 in April. He had practiced for 35 years, and he had even been a monk for 12 years, like in a Hindu yogic tradition. 12 years he had been a monk. So he had meditated much, much more than I had before my first awakening experience, and him also wasn't awakened. There are Sangha members from UK and Ireland who had meditated for 20 years, dedicated daily practice, couple of hours a day, and hadn't awakened. So it's very, very common story. People can practice, but when the view, the theory to support the practical practice isn't sufficient, these kind of things happen. So while I would like to say in a very positive tone that time spent in practice is never lost, that is not actually true. A lot of time is lost because of insufficient views, insufficient theoretical understanding, and simply because practices can be a little bit irrelevant, a lot irrelevant, or completely irrelevant when it comes to becoming enlightened, like the great masters, great Mahasiddhas, how they are enlightened. And that is actually a very important point. I wrote a Facebook post about this week or so ago, that we do not get to redefine what enlightenment is. I think that a lot of people who know Amrita Mandala and my work very superficially, haven't really looked into it, think that it is I have redefined enlightenment. But no, I have done exactly the opposite. And yesterday I was speaking about the path in very short descriptions, how in the beginning you start learning about through practices you start understanding the path map, and then you little by little through those experiences you gain confidence, and finally you become like a professional. You master, little by little you master the whole method. Where was I getting to? Sorry, I lost the track of my thought. This always happens to me. It never happens to me when I teach live. I never lose the track of my thought. But when I teach online, this happens. Where was I getting to? So anyway, maybe I just start with the same topic. So the point is that too simplistic views, we can express the view from the mountaintop, like has been done by masters like Guru Rinpoche, many other masters of Chokchen or Mahasandhi, great perfection, masters of Mahamudra, some Advaita masters of the past. I don't think that recent Advaita non-dual teachers or who are considered masters have really gotten that far. But past, like more ancient Advaita masters, they have expressed the view from the mountaintop in a very simple way because they have gone through the whole process. What does the process mean? What is the path? Our body-mind is the path. That's where the road, the path, the way is. That's where the way, the path, the road is traveled. This is our body mind is where our awakening happens if it happens. Our healing happens if it happens, if the practice works. Healing of traumas, healing of self-centered, self-based existence. This is where it happens. So, in Amrita Mandala, since 2021, now it's 23, so since 2021, we've had 16 or 17 people in our Sangha finish their wisdom side of practice. Or you could say, finish the path of Buddhist meditation. Finished the path of Vipassana meditation. And not to anybody to get confused, Vipassana is both used in the meditation culture today. It is used as a title, like a name, but it is really a principle. Vipassana is Buddhist analytical meditation, but it can be applied in two different ways, sutra and tantra. Sutra means that you sit down, you start looking your mind, and there's an impulse there that has a self, that has a me or mine, that thought in it, and you start analyzing what is that me or I or self in any thought or mental content. And when you do that, you analyze, you look in investigative, analytical manner, this mental content, that self, that I or me pops. We see into the emptiness or selflessness of thoughts, emotions, like I've explained extensively in my books. We see through subject self, object self, and then this subtle foggy energy or energies. So Buddhist meditation and the design of Buddhist tradition is really focused, really emphasizes that point, to see through our self-based habits and patterns, karmas, vasanas, samskaras, because that's what it is so important. So one way to practice Vipassana is to look at the mind directly. And that practice is very important to understand for tantrics also. And the other way of practicing Vipassana is Tantric Vipassana, which means that you practice Guru Yoga, you engage, you mix your energies, you surrender your energies, your whole being to a Guru or to a deity. And that's how the same Vipassana, same wisdom and clarity starts arising in you, clarity of the basic state, wisdom of the basic state, because all those self-centered habit patterns and negative self-centered habit patterns, that self disperses. So two ways to practice Vipassana, Sutra and Tantra. And as you know, we emphasize Tantric practice, but like I said, it is very important to understand Sutra Vipassana also for Tantrics. So the whole Buddhist tradition is really focused on this, getting into the realization that all phenomena have no solid self, have no solid self-entity. I could even say that, it is only a small part of Buddhism that discusses and teaches and has practices for light body. So I would even, I could say that it is this wisdom realization through seeing emptiness of selves that is very typically Buddhist enlightenment. This is what most of Buddhism emphasizes. In Hinayana or Theravada tradition, they do exactly that, although in lesser degree. And in Mahayana, it is really the center of the whole Mahayana Buddhist traditions and lineages that are many. Also in Vajrayana or Tantric Buddhism, it is the center of all teachings. Also compassion is, but compassion, well, that's a bit tricky. It's a bit tricky to say like empty statements, but bodhicitta, compassion, is very important. But when we practice bodhicitta, the way how I teach it is that, bodhicitta has two kind of meanings or functions in Amrita Mandala teaching, which is that it not only illuminates our mind, it stretches open, reveals our whole subtle body. That is purpose number one. And the purpose number two is that it makes us grow and mature as beings. Because, it is immature to just think for oneself, like samsaric beings do. It is immature psychologically, spiritually, to only think about myself or my family or my team or my nation, my anything. And it is mature to flip that around, to take, yesterday I was talking about flipping the sides. So the flip side of that samsaric notion is to practice for everybody, practice to benefit all beings, practice to help all beings. So maturation as beings, not being self-centered, self-focused, but thinking about the big picture. And why is that? Well, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself when saying this, but we are connected, karmically connected. Anything before saying more about this, I need to remind you that anything that I say, it is not to be taken as a belief. I don't want you to believe anything that I say, but I want you to practice and meditate a lot, so much that you experience all these things yourself firsthand. It is not cool with me. I'm not fine if my students start saying that Baba said this, Baba said that, and that's why things are so. That is not good enough for me. So the reason why bodhicitta is so important, which is also in Christianity, which is also in Hinduism, this thought of others. The reason for that is because, we have countless nadis in our subtle body, in our aura. And these nadis, they originate from the center line. There is this central beam of energy, the Bhumi pillar, the larger pillar that is really just one big pillar that extends up, extends below the body, and goes through the body. Right? And then from that central beam radiate, I wouldn't say radiate because it's light that radiates. What we're talking about very thin tubes that grow out of that central line, that central pipe. There are these small tubes, threads that make up the aura. But the nadis don't stop at the edge of the aura. They extend beyond the aura. Where do they go? They go to those beings who we are karmically connected to. There are nadis between you and me. There are nadis among you, practitioners of this Sangha. There are nadis between you and your family members, your friends, relatives, workmates, your deceased relatives. If we think 1 lifetime ago, 2 lifetimes ago, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 100 lifetimes ago, 1,000 lifetimes back, 5,000 lifetimes back, we have all those karmic connections with us to all those people, our family members, friends, teachers, anybody who we have known throughout many lifetimes. We have those connections now with us. That's why bodhicitta. We are not alone. We are not isolated. And it is... I often speak about developing our heart and developing our compassion in a genuine way by feeling people and life forms around us, whether it's a village or a city or a country or a continent. And we can very easily feel that, everybody suffers. We can very easily feel that. So, the great way, or the great vehicle out of suffering, just like it is said in Bodhisattva vows, I vow to liberate all sentient beings. Not only the sentient beings, the self-based habit patterns from our own mind, but from everybody's mind, from all minds. Because we are connected. We are all connected. If I have, I don't know, connection to 500,000 individuals, you might have 500,000. Everybody, every one of us has 500,000 connections. That's how all life is connected. Not only between human beings, but we have animal lives behind us. We have lives in other forms, perhaps even physical forms, but also non-physical forms. When we leave our bodies, if we have lived, for example, it's just a number that I pull out of my hat. If we have lived 5,000 or 10,000 lives, we have also died 5,000 or 10,000 times from human bodies alone. Where do we go? We go to non-physical realms, and we stay there from, samsaric beings usually, it can be very short, just days. If they're lucky, they have some spiritual connection to some spiritual master or God, perhaps. They might stay for 5, 6, 7 weeks before taking rebirth. Practitioners who have very strong spiritual karma might stay for months or for years or for decades. So you live in between physical incarnations, you live in non-physical realms, and in those realms are also full of beings. You know, beings like us, like human beings, can be teachers, masters of different traditions. And we also create karmic connections in non-physical. So my point is that all these connections we have at present from countless lifetimes. I remember when Maciej Labdron was asked that when did this whole show of beings taking rebirth begin and when does it end? And she said that, think about it this way. That it has always been going on and it will never end. And then we take a vow. It's not just a light prayer, it's a vow, it's an oath that bodhisattvas take. I vow to liberate all sentient beings. But here's the deal, before somebody gets freaked out. Here's the deal. There is only one way to be content, and that is through knowing ourselves as fully enlightened beings. If I say that in terms of a Buddhist cosmology, there are the 6 realms, 6 main realms. Then there are many sub-realms, but usually the basic version of Buddhist cosmology speaks about 6 realms. Gods, demigods, human beings, animals, demons, and hungry ghosts. 6 realms of transmigration, meaning 6 realms of repetitive, continuous, karma-based rebirth. So depending on one's karma and actions, you just keep going round and round and round. And as you know, it is not only... Think about the time you weren't a practitioner yet. There are moments of happiness and delight, moments of joy. There are things that makes us momentarily content. But then it is also marked, because there is this self, it is marked by heaviness and confusion. So there are all these life forms and shapes we can take, and we are forced to take, as long as we are samsaric beings. And the other option, to not be in that wheel, is to become a fully enlightened being, a Buddha, a Mahasiddha. Then and then only you're out of the wheel. Jesus, Babaji, Padmasambhava, Agastya, Yeshema, many contemporary masters, many people in our Sangha are already out of that wheel. There are yogis and practitioners in other Sanghas at present living in physical body who are also free, out of that wheel. So that vow I was speaking about compassion. So there is a very good reason for that. And what does it, maybe I should say a few words more. So when we take the Bodhisattva vow, I vow to liberate all sentient beings. So those who are fortunate and who are karmically very mature, like everybody here, uh, it is extremely fortunate to be in a situation where you can take such a vow. You learn about that vow and then you take it because you resonate with it. You feel that that's the way. That's the great way. And it can feel terrifying. You might be scared of it. But there are so many Buddhas and Mahasiddhas. Not that many in physical, but tens of thousands that I know of in non-physical. So we are not alone doing Bodhisattva work, Buddha work. We are not alone. And will never be. That's the thing. That's the thing I always choke up when I speak about this. But I lived thousands and thousands of life as a human being, just like, each one of you has. And I think about my past lives. I have memories of past lives. And then this life. And I know for certain that I would be completely fucked if there hadn't been the help of Mahasiddhas in my life. It is because of them, and only because I have karmic connection with them, why I am not fucked in this life. And when I say fucked, I mean that if I had continued my human life just like many of my childhood friends, many of them are dead because they grew up in so traumatic environments. They drank or did drugs so much that they're dead or in jail or just, drinking and doing drugs. So something like that. If we have very traumatic experiences early on, these traumas don't just disappear. They don't just go away. Even if you become a very successful person, perhaps a millionaire, so that your life becomes very easy, they don't go away. We know about rock stars, pop stars, film stars who take overdoses, who commit suicides, no matter if they have $50 million, no matter if everything external is perfect, but because they are screwed internally, is why they kill themselves. So, that's why I feel that I owe my life to my gurus, because it is only because of their utter kindness towards me, them gazing towards me, that has saved me and keeps saving me. Nothing to me is more precious than my connection to my gurus. Oh, so I was talking about the two different energy systems. So here we are. So getting back to that, those two energy systems to lay some foundation for the practices today and the following days, and for anybody to make sense of our style of practices, we have two different paths. Now we have actually formal names for these paths or lanes, because we have two. We practice Buddhist Tantra and Hindu Tantra. And if you go to the website, Carl Amrita Simha, he just updated the introductory materials there, and I decided names for these two lanes. So the path of wisdom and clarity for the whole 13 Bhumi Nadi process, for the wisdom process, for the emptiness process, and then path of healing and light as a name for the process of purifying the meridian system. Path of wisdom and clarity, path of healing and light. So, and the reason why we have two different paths, two different practices, two different methods under the same roof of Amrita Mandala is because we have two different energy systems. So one made of nadis. Nadi means channel or a tube. So we have like a what is that, finer energy body, and then we have grosser energy body, and that grosser energy body is made of meridians. In Tibetan system they speak of Tigle energy. They speak of Chalung Tigle, which means Nadi, Prana, Bindu. So they also have Nadi and Bindu, which means, I think that more fitting term would be nadis and meridians. It just makes more sense to me to speak about the meridians and meridian field. So the meridian field is the grossest of the energy bodies, and it covers the whole physical body. It doesn't extend but a little bit outside the physical body. It kind of radiates a little bit outside the physical body. And the meridian field, it covers all of the insides of the body. It's like I often come up with the image of, when there's a grass field, grass growing in the yard, it's kind of like fabric like that. It's a fabric, and there are lines there, like some of these lines are used in traditional Chinese medicine or traditional Chinese internal martial arts, healing arts, definitely, if you want to look at them, some of them. But to me, it doesn't really make sense to use the meridians like they are used in traditional Chinese medicine, for example, because it is a fabric. If traditional Chinese medicine speaks of 22 or 24 meridians, I would say that there are thousands of them. And that's why it doesn't make sense to only work with 20 or so of them, but we need to work with all of them, because you need to clean up all of them to return the original pristine purity of the system. And that same idea applies to nadis as well. I was writing about this as well recently in Facebook, that many systems of yoga and meditation, they have very limited, very small explanation of chakras. They might only have 3 chakras or 7 chakras, and then they might speak of 3 nadis, left and right channels, and then the central channel. What is that? 3 nadis and 3 chakras, 3 nadis and 7 chakras. Okay, it is better to work with those few centers and channels than not work at all. But if we have the whole aura is full of nadis, if there's 100,000 of them, what about all those? How many is it? 99,997 of them, if you're only working with three, right? So it is not logical, in my view. If you want to um, go all the way, if you want to become fully enlightened, not only have little benefit, become little bit spiritual, but go all the way, then you need to work with the whole terrain, the whole body mind, because it is in the body mind where that process and realization takes place and nowhere else. It is such an obvious and logical point, isn't it? And yet, look at the world of yoga today. It is, I don't mean to be mean or negative, but it's kind of like a beggar version of yogic practices and techniques. If we want to go all the way, which is the purpose of yoga, then we need to cover the whole system, the whole body mind. Not a little bit of it, not a little more of it, not a great degree of it, but all of it. And this, because we practice like that and I teach like that, is one of the reasons why practitioners in Amrita Mandala advance so fast, have these Bhumi events, awakening experiences, stabilize their being in natural state so fast, because we are making use of the whole system. Of course the results come fast in that case. It only makes sense, it's logical, right? So, path of wisdom and clarity and path of healing and light, both paths need to be finished, perfected, for us to become masters like Padmasambhava, Yeshe Ma, Babaji, Agastya, or Jesus. If we want to master ourselves, if we want to master our karma, this is what we need to do. We already, when we are practicing bodhisattvas, let's say that if we pass away when we have practiced few years of guru yoga with any guru, if we have had a number of awakening experiences into the basic state, then we already have very strong karma, very strong karmic connection. So if you happen to die at that point, then you have quite a bit of freedom in the non-physical before you need to take rebirth again. But you might be, with that kind of karma, you might be able to extend your stay in the non-physical, perhaps in like a non-physical ashram or pure land for some years. If you are a very strong practitioner, let's say 7-8 bhumis perfected, then you can spend decades if you want in non-physical before you need to take rebirth again. If you finish the wisdom path, you can choose whether you take rebirth at all or not. That's a big deal. But also, this is something that I need to say to my students. In the spring, in April, when I was there in Switzerland teaching the spring retreat, there was one session where we tuned into all the Mahasiddhas, especially in non-physical realms. And those of you who joined that session might remember that it felt like it's like this massive crowd of Mahasiddhas, like a big stadium or like an arena full of these beings who have this really pure presence. Anybody remember that session? And I thought that, it is wonderful, always wonderful to meet beings who are pure, who have finished the wisdom emptiness process. But then, after that session, I started thinking, most of those beings who are liberated, and I'm talking about liberated according to Mahayana, not Hinayana. So these are beings who have completed the whole emptiness process. Most of them are, nobody knows their names. It might be, let's think of a practical example. 6 years ago, 7 years ago, one old lady passed away in Tibet, and she became a nun in the later years of her life, but she had been a practitioner of mantra all her life. But when it was time for her to pass away, her body shrunk. Small rainbow body. So she was from a very small village, and people, around the world got to know of her only because there was somebody writing about her and taking pictures when she was still alive and then when her body had shrunk. I have also shared her story and her photos in my Facebook. But so her particularly became a little bit known in the world only because of social media. But let's think of same story, unknown nun in a small village in Tibet or in China, in Japan, wherever, attaining Buddhahood, but nobody except the very local community even knows of the existence of that person. And then 10 years goes by, fewer people remember her. 50 years goes by, almost nobody remembers that person. 100 years go by, nobody actually remembers that person. So most of those Mahasiddhas in non-physical, nobody knows who they are. They are just practitioners who have attained the emptiness stage, and then they are just there, idle, not doing anything. Not doing anything. That's a very big problem. I started, after that session in April, I started thinking about this. What the hell, they are just there, and they are Buddhas, and they are perfect, pure, but they're not doing anything. What kind of bodhisattva is that? So I often, when I've detected something like that, I tell it to the person directly. So I tuned again in my home practice sometime in late April or early May. I sat down and I tuned into these beings and I told them that, what is the point of that? They all have taken bodhisattva vows, but they're not doing what the vow says. I vow to liberate all sentient beings. So I asked them, what is the point of this kind of existence? You're just floating there like arhats, not really working for other beings. And I asked them, if you are real bodhisattvas, take rebirth physically. They can choose wherever they are born. They can choose their parents, you know. So they don't necessarily need to take rebirth in very harsh conditions. They can choose wherever, and in that way make their lives much easier. But this is something I want to say to my students, that I'm not cool with having students who have finished wisdom path who do nothing for others. I don't want to see any of my students, any of you, just sitting idle after you pass away. Yeah, you can always say that. Well, I'll just radiate blessings. Not good enough. If you're a true bodhisattva, you work your ass off for others. You work your ass off. If you're not giving your everything, you're not giving anything. Right? Somebody has to do something, you know. We have to stop this. It's kind of laziness. Somebody has to do something about this thing. Not hiding behind whatever convenient excuses. Not hiding because it has never been done before. Not hiding because it's very hard or difficult. We have to, and it's a responsibility thing as well. You know, that maturity as beings. It needs to be real, right? If it's only nice words, nice prayers, no matter how sincerely you say that prayer, it's only a prayer. This is one of the reasons why you know, the whole Yogis on Display project. You know, I've been talking about this for years, that it is extremely short-sighted from Western, or you could say modern, practitioners of meditation, that they keep their practice secret. In Asia, if you walk around, you can see monks and yogis and different types of practitioners on the street. Not practicing, but you know, they are wearing the marks of practitioners, and you know, people can see that there are spiritual practitioners here. Monks, nuns, yogis, yoginis, priests, priestesses, and so on. But in the West, we don't have that. People keep their practice hidden. That is extremely short-sighted. Has never happened in the history of Dharma before, that practitioners don't communicate with their robes, with their... I don't have a bindi at the moment because I forgot them at home, so sorry about that. But you know, we need to communicate to people around us, those beings who suffer. We need to communicate to them that there is an option. You don't need to go and give them pamphlets and ask them to join, but if you just meditate in public, somebody will notice that that person is not only taking a nap sitting up, but meditating. Right? That's what the Yogis on Display is about. And I'm really looking forward to have the Yogis on Display project really take, how do you say, a gear, gain some momentum, because I decided to make it part of the retreat and course fee system. You can see an example of this in the upcoming Amrita Kriya Yoga course that takes place next month. So you can pay with money or pay less, but then do a certain amount of hours of practicing in public. Because of this exact point, things need to change. We cannot afford to keep our practice secret during these times. Okay, so 2 energy systems. So yes, we have a whole bunch of different practices and techniques for purification. We have Guru Yogas with both Buddhist and Hindu masters. And then we also have main tantric practices for nadis, for path of wisdom and clarity, and for meridians. Main tantric practice for meridians or for the path of healing and light. Rainbow Body Yoga on this side for nadis, for the 13 bhumis, and Amrita Kriya Yoga for meridians. And then we have supplementary practices, a lot of supplementary practices. But then when you clean up both, is how full light body, full rainbow body happens. Yeah. So we have 16 or 17 people in our Sangha who have finished Wisdom Path. And yesterday I was talking about cessations. So, when you practice Rainbow Body Yoga or Guru Yoga, you start having this, your mind ceases. That whole mind machine, self-based existence stops for a moment. First they are 1 or 2 seconds long. After some time they might be a minute or a couple of minutes. And that duration extends over as you keep practicing until it finally becomes permanent. When it becomes permanent, you have purified the 10 bhumis, you have finished the path of wisdom and clarity. And you have become a Mahasiddha, first type Mahasiddha, meaning a realized individual. And then, through the practices for the meridian system, it's a very similar process, very different too, but in terms of cessations, it is the same. You start having short cessations, and they extend, they become longer and longer and longer until your whole meridian system is cleaned up. Just a moment, I have to switch on the lights. And then something I need to say about siddhis, powers. So, there's a lot of confusion about siddhis or powers, walking on water, turning water into wine. That would be handy if you were organizing parties. Or levitation. I remember Yogananda in his book, he said that, if you are a fully attained Mahasiddha, that you could create, if you wanted, a new set of teeth for yourself. I don't know, folks, about all these Siddhi things, and I don't care either. I don't care. In any case, you shouldn't start to, make it your motivation to come up with these special powers. Reading people's minds and uh, being able to perceive into non-physical worlds and such things, telepathy, I don't consider those siddhis. Well, maybe there are minor siddhis, but these are very common. Like if you practice a lot of pranayama, breathing practices, you start perceiving those things. No problem at all. I have tons of those experiences, and anybody can have. These are nothing out of the ordinary. But when when you start walking on water, that's very different. So I have never witnessed uh, stuff like that, and therefore I don't believe either. Like putting handprints or footprints in solid rock, I doubt it. I doubt anybody ever did that. There might have been handy stone workers though, and then somebody just charged that footprint or handprint. I will change my mind when I see somebody walking on water or doing handprints on solid rock. I will instantly change my mind, no problem. But I haven't witnessed that. But so please do take with a grain of salt when you have read about these things or you read about these things. But one case of incredible siddhis I have witnessed many times. So I think that there is only one, as far as I know. There might be others, but I think that there's only one light body master at present living in the world, and that is Hugging Saint Amma. I have spoken about Amma a lot throughout the years, and actually this year is the 20th anniversary when I met her the first time in 2003, but I have seen her many times without eating, without taking rest, without drinking, give darshan through hugging, give blessings through hugging to thousands of people over 24 hours continuously. I don't think people understand what it requires for her not to be at all affected by people's karmic energies, but to have thousands of people one by one come to her, and then she hugs them for a couple of seconds, and then these people are transformed after they leave. Her doing that to thousands of people, she has done it many times that she's sat for 24 hours straight. I think that I'm not completely sure if she has done it longer, but I can't say a definite number. But she has done it for longer, but to do that is an amazing siddhi. No eating, no drinking, changing people's karmic situation in seconds, thousands of people one after the other. That siddhi I have seen. And I think that, being able to, if not be completely without eating, drinking, and sleeping, when we purify the meridian system, one will be also practitioners of our Sangha when you get there. you'll be able to stretch, not needing to eat if you are not eating, not needing to drink like you needed to drink before, or like normal common people need to drink, or to sleep like common people need to sleep. This kind of city, I think, is well, it's more down to earth, but I think this kind of city will happen because the meridian system is directly connected and dictates what happens in the physical body. It dictates, it affects what happens in the physical body. So when in the meridian system, and of course in the nadis, all you have is completely pure energy flowing through, not getting affected by anything internal or external. So you're just radiating pure energy, pure blessings like a sun at all times. At all times. Yeah. So in our Sangha, myself also, I'm still working to clean my meridian system, and those students who have finished Wisdom Path are also working and having these cessations. And these cessations extend in duration, just like with the wisdom process, until it becomes permanent. Okay? So that's the goal. Just to be clear, let's not settle for some milestones on the way. Let's go all the way, people, together. Okay?